Hey, my name is Anna and welcome to my channel, Some Books and Sarcasm. And today I'm gonna go through what books I actually did enjoy and gave 5 stars in 2020. And I have a total of 20 books that I actually gave 5 stars, which is pretty decent when I read 120. Pretty good stats, I would say. So let's get into it. So what I've done is that I have 12 books that is non-romance and then 12 that are like feel-good / romance books, and I didn't want to really rank these, and I feel like that's a bit hard for me to compare the romance books to the non-romance because these are like enjoyment-wise. I feel like romance are like very enjoyable, but I feel like when I'm gonna like rank what is actually the best of the best, I feel like romance doesn't really cut it. They are always a bit, usually, there's some exceptions, but usually they are like a bit lower ranked 5 stars. Because you don't have that many tiers. Like, you have like 1 to 5, it's like 5 steps. It's not that much. So, first I'm gonna say in like no particular order all the romance / feel good I gave 5 stars, and then I'm gonna go into all the other books I read of this year, and then I have ranked them from 1 to 12 for how much I enjoyed them. Not really enjoyed them. How much I enjoyed them / how much I get out of it, or how much they affected me is a more accurate description. So let's get into it. First out we have Boss Man by Vi Keeland, which is an office romance, and he is of course her boss. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. I don't think it was anything super special about it, but I had a very great time reading it, and I think I read it very quickly, and like I had a hard time putting it down, and that is a very like telling for me that I want to give it 5 stars. And I think I also loved it a bit extra because of her boss, actually a chemist, and a chemist myself. I kind of like that because usually in this like romance you never really see people who are like engineers or chemists. Like I'm a chemical engineer basically, almost. Very soon I'm actually graduating, so I always kind of love when you get something else, and like usually people are either you have like these like doctor romance, or you have people working office or in law, but never really much else. Or in like, for like especially the guy in office romances usually is either like commercial or like an office job for something random. I don't know what people do in offices, or in like law. So I was really kind of liked that it was something different, and I think that kind of helped get a bit of 5 star from me. And next we have a Swedish historical romance by, which is like Agreements I would say in English, by Simona Arnstedt. Now this one is translated I think to Norwegian and Danish, I think Finnish too, and it was a very nice historical romance I would say. Especially it was fun to see a Swedish perspective on this, because I have never read it I think. No, I have. This is actually the first historical romance I read in Swedish. That is actually Swedish, so it was very fun. And she's a very good author I would say, and I'm really excited to pick up like anything from her. And next up we have The Bright Test by Helen Hoang, and I really loved her book The Kiss Quotient, which is like my all-time favorite romance novel. Like it's like, even except from romance, I feel like this one is like top 10, maybe even top 5 books of all time for me. That says something. I really enjoyed it. This one I also gave 5 stars, but it was a much weaker 5 stars. And the plot was basically in this one that the meddling mom wanted to give her son with autism a bit of help with his love life, and went to Vietnam to find a bride for him. That was the main heroine of the story, and it was good, but it was like something special at the end that was a bit weird. If you read it, you know what I'm talking about. That kind of decreased my enjoyment a bit, but it was still a 5-star, but a much weaker 5-star compared to the Kiss Quotient, which was a bit sad, but I'm still looking forward to the next one in this series, which will be released in May? Yes, in May. I've been waiting for it for like 2 years now. Okay, I haven't, okay, not 2 years, 1 year. I read it last, it was actually the first book I read last year, so 1 year. Yes. And then we have Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey, which was her best friend, no, her brother's best friend kind of romance. And what I really think set this one apart from a lot of other romances was that it was a lot of focus on her family and the family issues, but also his problem with his career. He kind of had to end his career a bit prematurely, and how he dealt with that, and also how she dealt with her family's expectations and not being happy with her career. And I don't know, I feel like I could relate a lot to the main character, and that set this romance apart from a lot of other romances I've read, and I highly recommend it. And then we have Beautiful Stranger by Christina Lauren, which is actually the second in the Beautiful Bastard series. And Beautiful Bastard I gave 4 stars, and this one I gave 5, and the next one actually I gave 3 stars. So this series is a bit all over the place. But I really like this one. It was not an office romance like the first one in the series. This one was more like a surprise one night stand. That they actually, that's kind of how it began. And then he actually tried to find out who she is. And of course, his friends know who she is. And then stuff happens. It's very steamy. And I think it was very... I feel like it was very different from a lot of other romance books, like its steaminess level, and it was a lot of focus on it, and I liked it in this book actually, because it was usually not that adventurous. Well, this one was, and I liked it about it, and I liked the chemistry super much between the 2 main characters. Highly recommend. Next up we have a Swedish feelgood, which is a Christmas novel, which is an unwanted Christmas present by Sara Molin. And yeah, it had everything I wanted from a feelgood. Perfect Christmas read. Highly recommend. And basically, she reluctantly comes home to Sweden to spend Christmas with her mom. And a lot of like stuff from past comes up. Stuff happens. Really recommend. And then we have also another Christmas novel, which is Christmas on the Island by Jenny Colgan. This one is 3rd in a series, and I love Jenny Colgan. She's my girl. Love everything I've read by her, and this one was no exception. I recommend this series. Basically, this girl has been living in London. She's a crush on her boss, and by her job she comes home to this small island out in the Atlantic. Stuff happens, and this one is the 3rd in the series. I would say the first one is the best, but I still gave this one maybe undeservingly a bit 5 stars. Still recommend it a lot though. And then we have finally The Secret of Happily Ever After by Lucy Dillon, which is a book about 2 women. They're all like in their 30s, and family stuff, business stuff, a bit of everything in between. And there's a lot of book in this one because one of them acquired a bookshop. A lot of book talk, which I love. A bit of cheating, but books about books always kind of knock it out a bit for me. But I liked the friendship between the women, and I liked the family dynamics, and I liked the darkness, and especially one of them. I could relate to her a lot, which I liked. It's also a very dark book at times, so if you're not really comfortable with dark things, I do not recommend. Otherwise, highly recommend. There's some dogs in there too, which I liked. Okay, that was the 8 romance/feel-good that I read, and now I will go from 12 to 1 of rest of the 5-star books I read. Okay, so my 12th, the last place on this list, was The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbery. So basically this is a woman who's portier in like this building. I think that's a French thing. Is set in Paris. Okay, I don't know if it's first French. It's not a familiar thing for me at least, but this portier, and she is very intellectual but secretly, and about her and people living in the building. And like it felt very an ode to intellectuality. The thing with this book was that when I read it, and right off the bat I kind of loved it, and even after like 10 pages I was like, this is gonna be a 5-star read. I'm already loving it, and I was right. It is a very kind of slow read, and it's a lot of everything kind of take place in the head of the characters.
Is it snobby? It sounds snobby.
It's not snobby. Okay, it's not. I wouldn't say it's snobby, even if it might be maybe sound like it. But I really just enjoyed the thoughts of the characters and the build up. And even if it is a bit slow, it's not much going on. I still really enjoyed it and had a hard time putting it down. But the ending was not that great. And I found it funny, I didn't know my mom had read it, and I talked to her and she's like, that ending should be illegal. Kind of agree. And that's why I have a bit hard time with this book now, because if the ending would have been differently, I think this one would have been at the top of the list. I mean, like, best book of the year, very much top of everything I've ever read. But the ending kind of put it down a lot for me, which was very sad. And I kind of get why she did it, but I didn't think that it was necessary for this. So I had very conflicting feelings about this one. Like, even should I recommend it to people? Because the ending was so weird. I have this conflicting emotion about that too. But still, I feel like still I want to give it 5 stars. But yeah, it is in the bottom of this list because of the ending, sadly enough. That was the biggest disappointing ending I think I almost ever actually read. I can't think of a book that actually had an ending disappoint me more. So that was very sad, but still a weak 5 star. But could have been so much greater. Okay, so next one on the list is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. I feel like this one doesn't even need an introduction. It's so popular in BookTube. But so everyone knows already what it's about, but I really liked the use of photography in this book. I liked how we used them to tell the story, and I was entertained. I had a great time, and I'm looking forward to continue. Didn't blow my mind or anything, but I was very entertained. So it was a 5 star. But I need something more entertaining for it to be higher up on this list. So let's continue to number 10, which is Holes by Louis Sachar. It's like synopsis is kind of so crazy and insane in a way, and that's why I kind of liked it. So basically, guy mistakenly end up in a youth center kind of thing, end up digging holes. And it's a very crazy plot, and I loved where coincidences kind of add up the storyline. I liked it. I think it worked in this story, and I was entertained, and I had a few laughs reading it, so I was very happy. The uniqueness of this plot and how funny I thought it was kind of set this a bit apart from Miss Peregrine, and that's why it was kind of a bit on top. Perch by Sophie Oxenden. This book takes place in Estonia through both modern time, around 2010 I think, somewhere there, and in the story after the war, in Second World War, and how the occupation of Estonia, and it's centered around this one woman and her family home. And basically it talks about how these events in Estonian history affects the modern day. I know my mom said this was her favorite book of all time. I also know that my aunt really loved it and she wanted to give the book to me, but then I was like, I already own it, but I haven't read it yet. So she's like, you need to read it. And then my mom read it, it's like, you need to read it. I liked it. I don't think I liked it as much as them. I think that they have a bit different perspective. They grew up in Finland and they also are older than me. They have lived through some of the events, like they are born in the 60s. They have a bit more take of the history because they kind of have lived through it a bit more. They're also Finnish. I think that this is a bit closer to them in a way than it was to me. It is a strong story, but I think that they could relate to the story in a way that I couldn't do because I'm much younger and I haven't really lived through like the Soviet Union, like this band, before I was born. While they're Finnish also, so they have also lived in the shadow a bit of Soviet Union and also after the Finnish Winter War in a different way. And I think all of that make them closer to this story. But I still think it is a very strong story, and it was also interesting because like I didn't know that much about Estonian history, so you get a very good glimpse of it in this book. And I think that she is very skilled in the way she writes. She has a lot of own descriptions of things in a way that I feel like a lot of authors are not able to do. And I think is this descriptions in the language set this one apart for me, and it's very skillful because it actually translated well, because I read it in Swedish and I know that my mom and aunt also read it in Swedish, but it is originally written in Finnish because the authors, I don't know if both her parents or one parent is from Estonia, but she is grown up in Finland. And that I think is very impressive when a book can have such an amazing language and be translated. That I think is very, very hard. So I have a very hard time describing why I like this book, which probably can be told by this very rambling I have been doing. But I think that I do recommend this to like everyone still, if you're not have a hard time with difficult subjects, because it's not a happy story. But I think it's an important story, so I recommend to pick it up. But I have a very hard time explaining why, I know. Well, next one now. Next up, another BookTube favorite, which is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And yeah, it is as good as everyone said it was. And I feel like it doesn't even need an introduction either. Everyone knows already what this is about, but I think it was very entertaining and I have a great time reading it. I did not see the ending coming, so I would say yes, read it. It is as good as everyone says it is. And then we have number 7, which is the only non-fiction book on this list, which is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot, and which is about the HeLa line, which is a DNA line that is very present today and how it came to be, which was kind of taken without the permission from a young African American woman. I don't know, it was the 50s I think, or 60s, I don't remember, without her consent. And now to take a look both on like the science behind it, but also on the family of the woman they actually took it from and how they did not get any of the money from the discovery. but the HeLa line has been very beneficial for mankind and have been to the moon. It has been helping cure polio, or was vaccine against polio, and takes a look at all of the ethical stuff, the science stuff, and I thought it was very interesting. But I know my mom read it on my recommendation, and she said she liked the history part and about the family, but she thought it was too like sciencey on the kind of how they talked about the cells and the DNA and stuff. Not the DNA, the cells. But I liked it a lot. I also have a background in chemistry, and even if I don't know bio so much, and I kind of hate bio, I thought it was very easy to kind of understand it. But I have a hard time to say how like easy it is to understand for a layman. But I think it's but otherwise I think it was very interesting, the story around the family, and if you're not interested with the science part, I still think the family part and aspect was very interesting. So if you're interested in science part, great, read it, and if you're interested in family part, still read it. It was a very easy non-fiction book to read, I would say. It's not so weird that it's very popular. And then we have Interpreters of the Maldives by Yuval Lahiri, and this was only a short story collection on this list, which I read because it's a Pulitzer Prize winner, because I don't really like short story collections. Short stories are not really my thing, so I was a bit like, I don't really think I'm gonna like it. I ended up really loving it. Like, writing short stories are hard, and like what I knew about was like short stories about like upper middle class exile Indians in like the US basically doesn't sound super interesting to me, especially like it's short stories, but like she blew my mind. Like, hats off, amazingly done. Like she wrote, I know it was 9, I think at least 7, I felt like really great stories, and that's hard. So I was super impressed by this. And the reason it's not higher on the list is because there was like a few that I would say was a bit lower, but like come on, like writing 9 super good short stories are hard. But like if you did like 7 in this collection, I feel like if she took them away, like those that I didn't like so much, I probably would have put this one even higher. Even if this is pretty good still. I mean, 6 on the list is pretty good still. But I think that could have been a bit higher also of my all-time favorite. So, but yeah, overall I would say, even if it's short stories and you normally don't like them, I would say read this one. Like, it's a very short book overall. It's under 200 pages, so read it. Okay, so finally we have the top 5 of the year. And I have some really great books on this list. Like, amazing books. Okay, so bear with me. First out we have My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. She's also written Rebecca, which is also one of my all-time favorite books, which is kind of revolving around a mysterious woman, which is the question is she actually horrible or is she actually good? And it's like this gothic story, and it's like evolving around this woman and a younger man, and the question kind of is like, who is she? And I really liked it. I think it was very interesting. A slow read though, so if you're not into slow paced kind of gothic, don't read. But otherwise I would say, like, if you like Rebecca, read this one too. It was really good, and I really thought the ending was really well made. I highly recommend if you like slow stories. It isn't plot based whatsoever. Then to my 4th, it's actually a YA novel. I usually don't like YA novels that much anymore, but They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera was really good. I like the premise, the text, and they tell you you're gonna die in the next 24 hours. And about these 2 boys, and how they spend the last day on Earth. And I don't know, but he writes so well tropes. It's like high school YA contemporary tropes. I so despise. I'm so tired of them. He's not tropey, which I like about him. He writes these characters amazingly well. Like, even if you don't like YA, I really recommend this book, and I had an amazing time. Cried my eyes out multiple times. Like, I had a hard time reading the book in the end because I was crying so much and my eyes started to hurt. So definitely read this book. And then, even further on the list, we have top 3. Another book I did not see was gonna come on this list is poetry. I don't read a lot of poetry. I read one poetry book last year and it's in my top 3, which is Love Story of the Century by Metta Tikkanen. Finnish-Swedish author, which means that she's Finnish, but her native language is Swedish, so this one is actually written in Swedish, even if she is Finnish. So, but I do still think that, like, even if you would have to read in translation, I still recommend it, because this is kind of based on her own experience, which is a poetry collection about her marriage to this kind of, culture man. This, like, he's basically an alcoholic, I think he's like illustrationist and an author as well, and their marriage. And it's heartbreaking, it's hard, but also very hard-hitting. Like, she writes it so well, I think, and it's both beautiful and horrible at the same time. And this is a book that's always gonna stay with me, kind of thing. Like, even if I read it, I usually kind of take my read book to my parents. I don't have a lot of space. This one is still in this household, and I have, like, put a million posters in it. Like, it's so heartbreaking. And I recommend to everyone. Even if you don't like poetry, read this one. 2 was very hard for me to actually pick, but in the end, I put Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes as my second. This is a book that I did not think I would gonna like. I know it's a Booker Prize winner that was pretty short, and that's why I picked it up. But I really loved it. It is a story that kind of takes place both when he's young and when he's older, and looking back to the events that occurred when he was younger. And I don't know why it was so hard-hitting to me. I felt like I needed to go and do everything right now and take, seize the day, basically, as far as I read it. And sometimes when I am thinking of wasting my life or something, I think about this book. And it's also a book I think is gonna stay with me for the rest of my life. I also forced my boyfriend to read it. He was not as nearly impressed. He's wrong though. Definitely wrong. Because it's hard to say what it's about, because it's not the story that is sounds super exciting, but it's hard-hitting. And it's one of those books that you're always gonna look back on. That's why it's on the top of this list. Okay, almost on the top of the list. It was almost number 1. But the number 1 spot, I felt like I earned it a bit more. Tiny bit more. And that was My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. Like, the title is amazing, and that is also what it is about. And like, oh, she did it so well. This like sister dynamic that she had going on, amazing. It's also like that it was set in Nigeria. She could do things with like if it was set like in US or something, you would have to take account to the police in another way than in this story, which made it very, very interesting. And it is not a thriller. I feel like some people put it as a thriller, but some people don't. I don't think it's a thriller. I think it's a lot about this sister dynamic and what is going on, and I think she does it so incredibly well. Like, hats off. I thought it was amazingly well done. It was very new, I would say. I feel like I haven't read any book quite like this, because even if there's like serial killer theme, I felt like this is like the secondary thing going on. It is the sister dynamic that is like the main point of the story, and that is so well done. So in the end, I put this one on top of my list, even if like it was a hard battle. But like, I was so impressed by it. That says something. So I guess that was my top list of the year. I'm pretty happy with what I read. I have read way too much romance this year. Way too much. But 2020, I am excused. But I still found some really, really amazing readers gonna stay with me forever. So at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy.